We're here today to talk about the fiscal year 21-22 financial. Again, Sun City West remains Arizona's premier active adult golf community. And I'd like to reinforce that. I know when I grew up, I was told never to brag, never to boast. But in this particular case, I want to take a little bit of time and do that. There's a couple people in the room I want to shout out to, and two of them will be presenting with me today. One is Mr. Todd Patty, who will be talking about a lot of capital improvements when it comes to our golf courses, and Mr. Karl Wilhelm, who will be talking about a lot of the other projects that will be going forward as far as this capital season moves forward. But recently, Consumer Affairs, a non-governmental group that looks after consumer purchases and consumer issues and concerns, recently published an article by Coventry Direct, which is a company specializing in life insurance. But this company analyzed over 2,600 communities like ours. There really aren't many like ours, but there are 55 plus communities sprinkled across the United States. And this company went out and did some research and analytical work on the affordability of places like ours, overall score, which they ranked people or communities nationwide regarding the top retirement communities within the United States. So of the 2,600, there's a ranking list there, but the highlight of that list, I think, focuses on the number 2 association, and that's us. Sun City West is ranked number 2 nationally by this Coventry group, based on the amenities that we have and all the scoring criteria that they put together. And I think there's a little bit to be said for that. Somewhere in the room was a Russ Boston. Is he here? Just stepped out of the room. And Mr. Todd Patty, who I mentioned earlier. Hello, Russ. Russ oversees the maintenance and repairs on a lot of the facilities, if not all the facilities within our association, as does Todd Patty, overseeing all of our landscaping sprinkled throughout this association, as well as the 7 golf courses that we maintain. These 2 individuals have been here for a total of about 30 each. I think they know this place inside and out, and I think this rating and ranking has a lot to do with them. And I just want to give them personally a shout out and thanks to you personally, and then every and all of our employees underneath you guys doing what they do. And thank you very much for that. So this second place ranking that we've got comes down to, again, the amenities, and the researchers say that seniors favor these important factors, which are like exercise, wellness, entertainment, outdoor activities, and we specialize in that. And our overall amenities ranking for Sun City West, we received perfect scores in this study. So these facilities that have been around for a while, as have some of our employees, really hold up to the test of time. And I think you're very, very, lucky and to be living in a community such as ours. And one quote that I would like to pull out of this study was that the analysis uncovered a vibrant, high-quality community teeming with kinds of amenities that make life after 55 a dream. And you know as well as I do, as long as you spend time here, they're not lying. They are hitting this nail on the head. It is very true. And our community day in and day out shows that. So moving forward, as far as our financial plan goes, our goals and objectives are basically built around the support and the key intentions of our governing board. They're around to protect and preserve and maintain and enhance our assets, and they've done a terrific job. We balance our current operational and long-term asset replacement needs. I think we meet and exceed reserve funding requirements, and we provide for funding and the investment for new capital projects. We maintain Del Webb's retirement community standards. Again, ranking number 2 in the nation goes to prove that. This budget meets the goal with no increases in owner member dues this year, and a modest increase we're asking for in the asset preservation fee for folks moving into our community. Management was challenged this year to decrease our operating expenses by 3% compared to the budget expenses typically based on historical trends. And as you'll see throughout this presentation, you'll see where our money actually gets spent. But over the last 25 years, these have been our trends as far as our annual dues go. And as you can see, over the last 5 or 10 years, we've kind of trimmed that down to very modest increases. Again, dealing with all of the changes and increases in cost and various operational needs that come across us as we continue to expand and enhance our facilities, we've kept our membership dues, I think, in a relatively good position. And so I just went too far. I scale back a little bit. I'm sorry about that. Katie, can you help me go back 2 slides? This ain't working. One more forward, please. Okay. So I want to take a little bit of time and talk about our dues. We hear a lot of phone calls and complaints and questions and concerns relative to our recreation fees, our recreation dues. A little bit of a semantics there because we really don't have recreation fees. We have annual dues. Our annual dues are mandated by state law. And so we are required to collect those. You have authorized yourselves by signing a deed when you buy your property to move into this environment, and that entitles us basically to provide these services for you at a very nominal fee. And so when we hear about phone calls coming in informing membership that due to the fact that COVID has closed a facility or two over time, that we're opting not to pay our annual dues this year. And that is somewhat of an educational program that we're continuing to try to get out there to people that these are not, again, recreational fees. You want to join a health club, you want to join LA Fitness or something like that, those are recreational dues, and you have the option to or not to pay those as you desire. These are owner member dues that take care of a host of operational issues that take place on a yearly basis. And so from the wages and the benefits that our staff folks have, it takes care of all of our human resource needs. It manages our CC&R program. It takes care of security both day and night. All of the utilities that we have, all the maintenance that goes on day in and day out, all of our 7 golf courses and all of the entertainment programs that we offer are all handled by your annual dues. And in a rough number, we're looking at about $1.36 a day for an owner member to reside within Sun City West, and your annual dues basically come out to that equation, considering all of the amenities that we manage, take care of, and improve along the way. Not here. So I don't have it up there. So we have to make, when we put our budget together, we have some budget assumptions that we have to make. As you well know, for well over a year now, we've been playing with the COVID-19 game plan. A year ago, we didn't know what was going to affect us. We're learning along the way. And I think if you recall back in February, March of last year, I think we were the first communities represented on the local evening news anyway, when it came to closing down facilities. Initially, we were met with our medical staff and not our staff, but our medical consultants, meeting with our team here, discussing COVID is on the way and be careful. At that time, the culprit or the main target within this community were folks over the age of 65. We average our age of our owners about 74. We took this very, very seriously. We made some closures. We jumped out on top of this early. I know there's a lot of turmoil, both on the political front in the United States, as well as internally here within the walls of Sun City West, whether to do it or whether to not. We erred on the side of safety. We're looking out for the owner members as well as our employees, as over half of our employees are actually owner members. So we played by the rules that were presented to us at the time, and we continue to do so. And so assumptions have to be made, and irregardless of COVID, we're moving forward, right? So the state of Arizona, during the time that we are playing with the COVID virus, basically increased our minimum wage fees. So those are mandatory fees that are imposed on us that we have to pay our part-time staff, of which half of our staff are part-time staff. And so that's an increase that we have to see in our expenses, right? So we also have an increase of up to 3% on our current staffing levels for all employees not at minimum wage. And again, nationally, healthcare costs are what they are due to various types of influences on the national market. Our local rates are also affected. So in the calendar year of 2021, which we're currently in now, we faced a 10% increase in our healthcare costs for our staff. And that's projected to increase by another 7% for the calendar year of 2022. So we made an assumption, right? We're proposing no changes in our membership dues, our owner fees, our associate fees, or our landlord fees this fiscal year. I think by the attendance in the room, I think that's been a positive move. But again, that's another assumption I'm going to make. But we are proposing to increase our fees to our guests from $3.50 to $5, and guests 18 years of age and under will remain at $3.50. The other increase that we're looking at deals with our asset preservation fees, and we're proposing a $200 increase from our current rate of $3,500 budgeted, and we're averaging a little under 1,200 homes a year being sold. So a little bump as far as your buy-in rate to come into this community, we're proposing as far as this year goes. We're also looking at a little bit of a bump in golf rounds. So we're budgeting 287,000 rounds compared to the actuals in 2020 of 281, or fiscal year 20. Again, no proposed fees in our golf rounds and our golf cart fees, a $2 increase in cart rentals, and no fee changes in bowling rates as well as our facility rentals as far as our facilities go. So the revenue impact as far as COVID, as far as the economy goes, we look at these main sections of our operation and kind of figure out where we're going. So let me start a little bit with membership, if I may. Again, a 0% increase. And that really comes down to the fact that we have been and continue to struggle with COVID restrictions. And there has been some frustration, I know, because we hear a lot of it from our members having to deal with closure of facilities and various setbacks and along those lines. So we're moving in that direction. I talked earlier about our guest fee increases as far as individuals over 18 for $5 and keeping everything flat for everything else. When you compare our annual fees to a lot of other communities like ours, we're still sitting relatively at the bottom of the list. And that's really amazing considering the $150 million of assets that we have here that we manage on a daily basis compared to what it actually costs to live here. And we take a lot of pride in that, and we want to be able to continue this program throughout the years to come and keeping our fees at a very, very modest level. So when it comes to golf fees, again, I wanted to remind you that we're not proposing any increases. We really haven't seen a real full season since we raised our fees the previous year. But again, a modest $2 increase in golf cart rental rates, which is primarily outside users. The vast majority of owner members typically here have their own golf carts, and the $2 increase also helps with the assistance of acquisition of new carts and our replacement program. As far as the other facilities go, no proposed fee changes because we think this fall, when things kind of get back to what was ever normal, I think the activities that are going to pick up will basically help to recover the revenue that we maybe lost last year, and I think we're already seeing that take place when it comes to increased special events that we're having now, as well as what's taking place over at the sports pavilion and our bowling alley, and how many lines of play we're actually seeing now is picking up nicely. So status quo on the special events, and we hope to get to be reopening to a lot of wonderful activities beginning in the fall of this season. And I'd like to take a little bit of time and share with you now on a kind of a pictorial basis of what our budget really looks like. So when it comes to our revenue, the large green piece that you're seeing there is membership. That pretty much is why we're here. And the large blue piece off to the left is our golf course revenue. We are a premier golf course retirement community. And so if you look at the membership fees that we collect and our golf revenue, it is by far the vast amount of money that we bring in when it comes to operating this association. And on the expense side, the big pieces are salaries and payroll taxes and benefits. So if you take the green and the kind of aqua-colored pieces of that puzzle and put that together, you'll see the vast majority of our expenses are basically people related. We are a customer service organization, heavily needed, and the operations of what we do is very much people related. The other, if I could go back, Katie, just one time, thank you. The repair and maintenance takes up another large chunk of what we do. And again, when your amenities score a perfect score on an independent evaluation, I think there's a lot of credit to be had for the repair and maintenance team that we have assembled, taking care of the amenities that we have. And then the other large chunk, the yellow piece, be it utilities, is what it is. We're sitting right now in the R.H. Johnson Recreation Center. It is the largest recreation center in the state of Arizona. And as you all know, in the summertime, if you stay here for the summertime, you have an electric bill. We have to keep air conditioners running. Russ, how many air conditioners do you have? 240 air conditioners? Yeah. So there's a bill for you. So moving forward, our expense-related impact, right? So we asked our staff by department to please take a very, very hard look at their operational budget and come forward with a little more than a 3% decrease in expenses. How can we cut our funds and still remain the quality enterprise that we are, right? So we're holding wages for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. We're looking at a 2% bump as far as the part-time folks go, mandated by the state of Arizona. 3% increase potentially up for the full-time staff, again, beginning in January. And the full-time positions and assessments and vacancies have all been analyzed as far as true need goes. And we've done our best to kind of minimize what we have to do. And I think that'll come out a little bit further when Mr. Finelli gets up and discusses a little bit of our CFO scenario and shows you some numbers on that. So the inflation factor is what it is. 2% on our operational costs we're projecting, and what we're already seeing due to COVID and other factors is on our capital cost. We are seeing somewhat of an increase in costs when it comes to materials, labor, and those types of things for Karl to get a lot of our projects completed. So our capital improvement impact, again, we have capital needs, which are typically handled by our asset preservation fees, the interest and depreciation, and our reserve fund. And that will be all spelled out for you here shortly. Moving forward, again, we're proposing a $200 increase into our APF scenario. That should generate us a little over $250,000 based on 1,100 homes being sold next year. That's good. As you well know, we have 50 new lots that have been approved, and they are currently for sale. So we anticipate those houses coming online at hopefully as soon as August. But they are moving nicely as far as the Cahovanian project is going. So we pick up another 50 houses there. And as far as the last couple of years, focusing on the blue lines in this graph, as far as fiscal year 21, we either tied or increased every month going back a couple of years in the number of homes actually being sold here. The market is hot, so to speak. For sale signs don't last very long in neighborhoods. Homes are turning. This is very good for the community, and it's very good for us. A highlight that I'd like to touch on is a program that we found that basically does some real estate data solutions for us. We nicknamed as REDS. And we've implemented this a few months ago. And there are properties that take place or transactions that take place that sometimes fall through the crack and have for several years. Well, this computer program allows us to find those now. And so over the last several months, it's assisted us in collecting $392,000 that normally we would not have seen. So this hats off again to our management team as far as the folks in our membership department, Mr. Finelli and the finance team and whatnot for managing this. And we are currently dealing with another 22 additional properties currently being invoiced. So this is a good catch for us. At this point, I want to call time out, introduce a couple of gentlemen who are going to speak a little bit as far as our capital-related projects go, and that's Mr. Todd Patty, almost a 30-year employee, oversees all of our environmental services throughout the association and our 7 golf courses, and one of the big reasons they look and play like they do is this gentleman about to speak. Thank you.
I'm just going to go over a couple slides that capital budget review on golf maintenance are proposed. All right. We have a shoreline project, hardscape over at Trail Ridge Golf Course, number 14, both lakes for $296,000. And then phase 1 of our irrigation turf reduction project at Grandview, installing road crossing main lines and new pump station for $865,000. Phase 2, we're scheduled to start that in the spring of 2023. And here in a minute, I'll go over a timeline that I put together for the entire project. And then car path repair, slurry seal at Trail Ridge and Stardust, while we're closed this summer, for $120,000. All right, our shoreline project. The purpose is to reclaim the original shoreline, kind of stop the erosion that's happened over the years. We'll install a split face block wall like we did on the other lakes. As you can see in the upper right there, that's number 18 at Pebblebrook. We did that last summer. And then the other one next to it is number 17. So we're going to do both lakes, the upper and lower lake. On number 14, we'll install some rock. It's called riprap on the desert side of both lakes. And then we'll come in and backfill, soften the slope a little bit, and then resod those areas. Course is scheduled to close on Monday, July 5th, and then would reopen after the fall overseeding October 19th. And then the Grandview Irrigation and Turf Reduction Project for $865,000. Phase 1 includes irrigation design, turf conversion design. Right now we're looking at about 20 acres of turf that we would remove. Irrigation and mainline road crossings, there's 9 of those total on that golf course. Pump station installation, all the required Maricopa County permits. And then this also includes allowance to submit documents on behalf of Sun City West for the Arizona Water Protection Fund grant. So hopefully we can get some grant money to offset the cost of the project. And then on the timeline, you can see here, July of this year, budget for design and installation of road crossing main lines. We'll select an architect and complete the property survey in August, and then in November, we'll go through the bidding process. In April and May of 2022, we'll actually do the project of installing the main lines and the new pump station. We don't have to close the golf course for this. And then the following year, in July of 2022, we would go through the budget process and budget for phase 2. We do the budget process or the bidding process in November, and then start the irrigation and turf reduction project in April. And that would go all the way through October, and we'd reopen the golf course after the fall overseeding. So right now we're looking at probably a completion date. If we start on time in April, we would look at a completion date of somewhere in the first part of August. And then our cart path slurry seal at Trail Ridge, again, $60,000 for that, and that will be done during the summer during our closure. And then also at Stardust. Our golf maintenance equipment replacement plan for $1.6 million involves mowers and tractors, aeration equipment, top dressers, greens rollers, bunker rakes, fertigation systems, which are in the pump stations that puts liquid fertilizer out through the irrigation system at night, light and heavy duty utility vehicles with trailers, and there's a few pickup trucks that are also scheduled for replacement. This is just a breakout of the equipment replacement plan. Each golf course, you can see there's like 9 units over at Pebblebrook and 5 units Echo Mesa, 10 units over at Trail Ridge, and then off to the right there, you can see the total amount per golf course as it breaks out that 1.6 million. So we have 52 units scheduled for replacement, average of just a little over 7 units per golf course. And the average age of the equipment that we're replacing is 15 and a half years. And then in the golf operations department, we have 20 rental golf carts that are on schedule for $101,000. Current inventory average age is 10 years old, and this reduces repair and downtime current fleet. So now I would like to turn this over to Karl.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
I do want to just make a brief announcement that on May 20th at our governing board meeting, regularly scheduled, Todd will be doing a presentation relative to the update on the Arizona Department of Water Resources and water conservation that will basically come into an effect in 2025, which basically mandates how much water and how much turf we're allowed to throw and play with when it comes to golf courses into the far future as far as the state of Arizona goes. So Todd has a pretty good report on that, and I just want to put that out there as a brief commercial advertising. So right now, Mr. Karl Wilhelm oversees all of our project proposed options for this year.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning, everyone. How are you today? I look forward to sharing you the proposed projects for FY 21-22 in both repair and replacement and new capital. It has been proposed that we have 9 HVAC units throughout the community's rec centers that need to be replaced for $102,487. These units were installed at Beardsley previously in 2004, 2002 at Pebblebrook, and the R.H. Johnson units also in 2004. So we've certainly got an amazing life expectancy out of these 9 units. I would like to move over to the Kuntz parking lots 1 and 2. We have completed all the master planning projects over at Kuntz over this previous year. We built a 4,800 square foot addition for 2 craft club rooms, an expanded area of the fitness center, a storage area, renovated courtyard for general purpose, multi-use, and we installed a 60-car parking lot between tennis and the existing pool. Those projects are complete. They look really good if you get an opportunity to go over there and view them, use them. You have a new spa. But due to all the construction traffic from that project and the life of our parking lots there, yes, it would have been really nice to be able to do parking lots in the same year and have that done. So to get that completed per its useful life, the asphalt is going to be removed in this upcoming summer if the budget is approved for this. And in conjunction with that, we will also finalize our last rec center with parking lot lighting and walkway lighting replacement like is going on currently at the Palm Ridge Rec Center. So if you happen to be touring or using Palm Ridge, you'll see that we're replacing the 25-year-old parking lot lights that with the new LED energy efficient lighting, brighter, large energy efficient savings for the rec center's utility bills, and will create a much safer environment for traveling through our parking lots in the evening hours. Moving forward, the R.H. Johnson facilities fitness areas have cardio, treadmills, and cross trainers that need to be replaced, $89,799. This current equipment has reached its useful life and reduces the frequency of repairs that we do through the facilities maintenance department. A new capital request is the Beardsley Greenhouse replacement and expansion. This is kind of a combination project that came about, one, due to its useful life. Facilities maintenance has been asked for a handful of years now to make capital improvements to the existing greenhouse. This greenhouse currently is a 380 square foot structure. It allows the growing and expanding garden club to have 4 or 5 members working in there at a time. The original structure was definitely designed for their leisure and growing abilities of what their club grows, cactus, desert plants. But over time, as the club has grown, its infrastructure has worn. This is not a greenhouse that is easily maintainable, and it doesn't currently meet all of the safety and ADA requirements that we like to have present in all of our other facilities. So when this came about, we discussed that we could no longer repair the existing structure, and saw that on our asset tools that this structure has met its life expectancy, and we proposed for the replacement unit. At that same time, the garden club asked if it was possible to do an expansion in that same area. They have conservatively asked to increase that size to 960 square feet. The site is site ready for an expansion. The features that you see in the photos here, the bottom left is the old greenhouse as it exists today. The picture that you see of the greenhouse on the far right is a brand new greenhouse built by Sun City, located off of Grand in the 103rd Avenue approximately. And after going and discussing greenhouses with multiple manufacturers in the industry, only a couple are available here in the Southwest. Both have comparable opportunities for us to expand a greenhouse, and both costs were approximately the same. Ultimately, the lesser cost greenhouse was the same manufacturer that Sun City ended up selecting to build their greenhouse. And they have been a great manufacturer to work with, collect our data, and get a bid from. So working together with the garden club, staff, architecture, we proposed for $300,000 to build a new expanded 960 square foot greenhouse at the Beardsley Garden Club area. Beardsley Aquatics lobby enclosure, $160,000 to provide an environment at the entry of the Beardsley Aquatic Center, very similar to what we have at the R.H. Johnson Fitness Center. This would allow our members to congregate, start their day of fitness, both at the pool and at the fitness center. When they're done, they have an opportunity to be able to comfortably wait for their rides in an air-conditioned space. So primarily, we are asking to have this area enclosed, the arches with windows, the central or the main entrance with a door, and the proposal space layout looks like this slide here. Basically, some comfortable seating areas, information stations, TV and media space so that you can see what activities are going on at Beardsley. Relocating the monitor to into the far left of the room, but out of the monitor station, and allowing the monitor station to sit as is as a storage area and a viewing area for the monitor to look at the activity in the pool. So drywalled space, drop tile ceiling, closed windows and door, and an air-conditioned environment. Also at Beardsley, pool area lighting has been requested for multiple years. The Properties Committee has brought it to our attention that asked if we could solve that in this next fiscal year. We proposed for $120,000 to add new indirect LED wall-mounted fixtures. Our expectation, working with a major company in the country called Musco Lighting, provides preliminary photometric survey and demonstration of display of lighting prior to us making any investment in this project. So they're willing to bring out the lights that they're wanting to sell and show us prior to us making any commitment that their performance is going to illuminate that space similar to what you see in the right-hand photo there. Also at Beardsley, Properties Committee has requested pool and spa area improvements. So with all things going hand in hand, we have a few areas that could use some color, wall improvements, a little better decor. We've met the useful life expectancy of the end of pool carpet. If you're over there, you'll see that the carpet is weathered, met its age. And we propose to do a design solution to paint colors on the walls and wainscoting. The project is concurrent to my next slide of the end of pool carpet replacement. So the end of pool carpet replacement is proposed to take out the water features that are in the ground and one that's on the wall and replace it with level concrete to the rest of the area and provide a rubberized flooring space for multi-purpose exercising, use, lounging. We have all kinds of opportunities to use that space while you're enjoying the pool environment. And all these colors will be designed to match the existing quarters as we speak and really brighten the place up. So between the lobby enclosure, the lighting improvements, and this interior pool and spa decor improvement, I think Beardsley's really going to step up a notch if we get this approved in the next budget. Over at Palm Ridge, if you visit there often, you'll see that Palm Ridge's wall tile in the pool area is basically a 4x4 white tile. Over the years, due to just building settling, cleaning, age, maybe a piece of equipment touching a wall, the tile is in disrepair. Tile is not matchable anymore by color. I know it's white, but every time we put a new white, there's a new white on the market. So we propose to do a new wainscot tile replacement at the Palm Ridge Rec Center, $50,000. And this project scope is about 1,745 square foot of new board that goes behind the tile, the sealant due to its moisture area, and new tile. Also up, a new capital request, R.H. Johnson Environmental Services Maintenance Office addition for $150,000. Todd Patty manages not only golf maintenance crews, but he also has the environmental crews that maintain our rec centers, landscape areas, special projects, irrigation, and they meet literally right on the other side of these walls over here at the social hall. And their current office for all of his staff meets in this makeshift shed area. And the shed is in disrepair. Its original design and build is 560 square feet. It's right off of the loading dock area, and we intend, the original one is 480 square feet, and we intend to replace it with a 560 square foot addition. So we currently are experiencing leaks, rodent issues, and this corrects the unfit conditions, offers the supervisors a 2-desk office, a small staff break room, and employee lockers. Here you'll see the set of plans for that area. These are the preliminary plans right off the loading dock. Does not interrupt the operations of our loading dock for the social hall or R.H. Johnson uses. 560 square foot addition, and it allows for access for both ADA employees and or stair access to the loading dock and still have trucks come into that space. And this is an overhead of that office space. Again, you can see approximately 10-person staff break table, 2 office areas, access into the social hall restroom areas for the staff. Folks, thank you so much for coming today. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. And that is the culmination of what we proposed in the fiscal 21-22 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Moving forward, to finalize the budget, now we get into somewhat of the meat and potatoes relative to our income statement, our revenues, and our expenses. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Peter Finelli, our CFO, who will get you through this portion of the program.
The time to take a look at our financial statements. Hopefully some of the information we provide today will be enlightening to you. The current year, the fiscal year is, as Bill referenced earlier, our year ends on June 30th. And so this is titled Fiscal Year 21 that we're in. We all know that the impacts from COVID on both our revenues and expenses made the current year very, very unique. And so those comparisons for the budget year against the base year sometimes leads to some very unusual percentages. And so on a very macro level, I'd like to maybe explain some of the material changes. So there are three components to our income statement. There's revenues, expenses, and then capital related component. Referencing the revenues first of all. What I noted first was blue. And if you look down at the bottom, I said this is a resurgence of our revenue streams. Most notable one is membership. And while we referenced already that there is no increase in our dues, we still will see some resurgence because the association lost a considerable amount of revenue from tenant cards, guest fees, and the like over the last, in the current year that we're in. Bowling is also in that quadrant. They went down to 40% of their normal run rate. The budget is not going back to full COVID until we see that everything's cleared. So right now we've got about a 74% of our pre-COVID levels is in the budget cycle. And then lastly, mostly the golf arena for merchandise and food and beverage, those pro shop closures led to a considerable amount of decline of those revenues. And you can see we expect to recoup a lot of that. The second quadrant, as I call green, this is where essentially we went into complete shutdown. And those were what you all know as the special events. In recreation, a lot of people don't know what that is, but that's hall rentals, this type of space, and tours and things like that. And so we anticipate virtually no revenues in the current year for those quadrants to restore themselves. And the last one is actually a little bit of a decline, and that's not a negative, but golf has a normal run rate of 285,000 rounds per year. If you look back 5 years, one of the benefactors of the COVID was that it was perceived as a safe alternative. And right now we're on pace to be in the 310 to 315,000 rounds. For two reasons, we're going to scale that back to the 285,000 that we've referenced on an earlier slide. Number one was just the alternatives for people that took up golf. We hope they stay. I hope I'm wrong and we continue on that pace, but I thought we'd be wise to go with the lower rate. The second thing is there was almost 180 straight days of no weather-related impact in our current year. Historically, we get about 30 to some days where the weather issues impact, and so our current year run rate of 310,000 rounds has been benefiting from that. So that's it for revenue, and overall we should generate hopefully about 578,000 more in our next cycle than on the current year. Expenses, the main expense, of course, for the association, as Bill referenced earlier, is our salaries. I highlighted what he's mentioned already on the increases are up there, but the item of health insurance is highlighted as 9.4% increase over our projected year. There's not much really we can do with that, in that the insurance rates, especially now with all the impacts they've had for COVID-related expenditures, We're not sure the 7%, one rated or the other, but that's what we're estimating for now. These are the non-labor operating expenses. I'm highlighting a few of them for you up here. As Bill referenced earlier, scattered all throughout the 10 or so light items on here is an effort by our managers and staff to reduce our pre-COVID spend, meaning the actual FY 19-20, not the current year we're in, by 3%. And I think if at a granular level, we've accomplished a lot of that. Some expenditures that are increases that have been approved in other settings, and hopefully the governing board will approve this as well in their final May 20th approval, will be about $30,000 for the Arts Committee to have expenditures allowance for theirs. There's no absolute to that. It's just an allowance for them to spend as they present to the governing board for approval throughout the year. One major expenditure, and I think it's a wise investment, is in our legal and professional includes $150,000 for an outside consultant to assist with the master planning that hopefully will have results that will be at the forefront of next year's budget cycle, taking into account special space utilization and our equipment in our charter clubs and all the needs of this association. And lastly, I'm at BNF next week if anybody's interested. Our property and casualty insurance premium will incur an $80,000 increase, and this despite that we literally had no claims affiliated with our association in the current fiscal year. But the impact of hurricanes and fire and judgments by juries that are now giving much higher settlements than they ever did for personal injury. And also a lot of the insurers are exiting the marketplace. So less competition usually leads to higher premiums. One benefit on the green, if I could note, is that a pretty large expenditure, it's not a capital related, but we seal and stripe our parking lots. Those can be pretty material spends. I think we did 2 in the current year. And timing of everything is we have none of those projected in the upcoming cycle. So the last component of the income statement is our capital related. As Bill referenced earlier, we are proposing a $200 increase, but currently we're on pace to be at almost a $1,389 roughly average. I always prefer to be a little bit on the conservative side, because at the very end of this, you'll see that the APF's funds represents almost 70% of our inflows. And so I would prefer to exceed that 1,200 versus come up short to it. So that's why you're seeing a decline. I'm hoping this hot market and the $200 increase will actually prove to be more beneficial. The investment income, this reflects, of course, our change from 60-40 November 9th to a 90-10 equity bond ratio. We're still anticipating about a 1.5% yield on the reserve funds. And our current investment advisor has been used since 2015. They had rates that were about half of what the going rate is in the investment advisor circles. With new clients coming on, Vanguard is the one I'm referencing, and they advised us that they needed to establish a higher expense ratio, and so it roughly doubled or so but we're budgeting for about $36,000 more for that. So take all those items and summarizing them, about $578,000 more in our revenues. Our operating expenses, $743,000. So our operating income will be down about $165,000. But if you do note 2 material items, that includes our investment in our master plan and this new arts related. So generally speaking, take those out. We're maintaining neutrality despite no increase in our golf or our dues fee structure. In the capital related, this mostly reflects the rather material amount that we did benefit from our investment income throughout the current year. That's been muted to some extent by the 90-10 ratio, but it provides the stability that I think is important for us to do the proper planning. I can go by that. That was just a header. Real quickly on our capital plan, the aggregate of all the things portions that were referenced by Todd and Karl are baked into about a $5.684 million capital spend in our current year. This, of course, does include $395,000 for allowances that are at the general manager's authority to spend if a need arises. So there's no absolute to that, but it's been historically in that rate. And new capital, about $728,000, a lot of which were Beardsley and the landscaping maintenance office. I won't bore you with too much longer, but you can see that we can have pretty high volatility in the amount we spend. The irrigation is the second line up there. Right now we're anticipating the Grandview in the FY23 cycle, and then the Echo Mesa in the FY25 cycle. And those are, but apart from that, you can see that there are years when we have pretty sizable reductions in our HVAC spend or our asphalt flooring and roofs and things like that, which those roofs and parking lots, things like that can be very material as well. And again, we take the bolded column in the middle there, and that's of course our the budget that I just explained. I don't put a lot of nuances into this other than just generic up at the top. You'll see that to accomplish our 5-year cycle and the what-if modeling that I'll show you is the last slide coming up. Right now I still have very modest increases within our projected dues along the lines of what Bill was referencing. None of them even tap into the 3% range. They're all 2.8 or less. And then it's a little bit hard to read this, but our fully funded balance, which is basically a percentage that the association uses to establish what our risk ratio is for the amount of reserve funds we have in our funds against the future funding needs for the repair and replacement of all the equipment. The range of risk is usually measured from a low of 30% to 100% being gold. The governing board last spring approved that nowhere should the fund balances arrive at anything less than 40%, and we're projecting it by the end of the current year will be in the 54% range, and after the end of next year we'll be in the 55% range, and 5 years out we approach nothing less than 50%. So I think a safe barrier against that 40% threshold. And also we still have allowances for capital that are close to $1.2 million a year. So there is accounting for that as well. It's not all just on repair and replacement. So real briefly, our rate sheets are going to be real quick because while this is a busy slide, basically what we want to point out to is there's no changes. And these are all posted on our website. The golf in the upper right part, our golf cart rental moved from 14 to 16 for carts, and pull carts went from 3 to 4. No changes in bowling, and no changes other than the $200 increase in the APF and the $1.50 for our guest fees in our membership and owner member dues and fees structure. Real briefly on FTEs, you can kind of see that the actual column of right in the middle for FY 19-20 was about 313,000 due to the impact of closures at some of our rec centers. Plus, I think the association, I know of 4 or 5 people within our direct department already within the building that I function in. we saw impact from, let's make sure that we don't necessarily just move to replace. And so over the current year, you can see we went to 285 full-time equivalents, and now we're restoring that back in this budget to the pre-COVID level, and that's our FTE structure at this time. Any questions? Or? Thank you.
So if we went through that too fast or you want to review it at your leisure, this was recorded and will be, it was broadcast live, but it's also recorded on our YouTube channel. To find that, just go to suncitywest.com, and up at the top you'll see little square icons for Twitter, for YouTube, whatever. The YouTube one is red, looks like a little video play button. And then also on our e-news and our Facebook, we will be posting the hard copy of this, a link to that as well on our website. So start at suncitywest.com and you'll be able to find all of this.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call Todd, Karl, and Pete back up to the stage, and if any of you all have any kind of questions related to any of our slides here today, I'd be more than happy to address. I do want to just take a brief moment and pass out a couple of these brochures that really talk about our annual dues and the services.
Folks, if anybody has any questions, go up to the center mic, please. State your name and your rec card number and ask away.
Bill Weaver, 124087. I just have a question. I'm always interested in the reserve fund and questions regarding that. And the board has decided that it could never get less than 40%, but to me, any percentage doesn't make sense, because what you're trying to insure against is the death of assets. And so, since they don't all die at the same time, what tools are you using to make sure that 40% is going to be enough in the worst year or the worst disaster or whatever? Or is there a model that you're following that makes sure that we do have enough in reserve to cover an impending disaster?
Well, thank you, Bill. So a little understanding of what these terms that I threw out in a macro level, we'll dig in real briefly. So there's a reserve study, and the reserve study is, for this association, roughly 1,200 individual line items in which each item identified on there has three components. It has the current cost to replace it today, what's the projected replacement date, and what is the remaining useful life on that. So if you were to do one item of those 1,200 line items, just to keep it real simple, if you had a widget that cost you $10,000 and you installed it 2 years ago, in 2 years' time, the reserve study anticipates that in 2028, you'll need $10,000 and 3% more inflation on that. So roughly $11,000 in 2028. You need to have those funds available to replace that widget. So each year, 10,000 divided by a 10-year life is about $1,000. So the reserve fund study says you need to be keeping those funds available. Well, that aggregate of all 1,200 line items then does that same macro equation on each line item, and it comes up with an amount at a real time says at this juncture you need about $50 million to repair and replace all items, as you mentioned, if they were to come due immediately. The second part is the reserve funds, and the reserve funds gets three main investments each year. The biggest and by far the 70% of the funds comes from our our asset preservation fees, the $3,500 currently that's administered on any title transaction. The second part is the $1.5 million or so annually that comes out of the operating cash flow excess. And I want to speak briefly to that. That's about 20% of our R&R infusion. So many of you are actually possibly part of HOAs in your own portion of Sun City West. But if you weren't, I'm in one. And if you were to go to their annual meeting or monthly meeting, you'll find that in their income statement, many of them will have blank percent of your dues to pay for repair and replacement of the common area equipment, whether that's parking lots or roofs or equipment. And on average, across the industry, that's about 15 to 20% by any literature that we've read in as HOAs. So do you have anything in your 497 dues that's directly identified for repair and replacement for that? No, you don't. What you do is you have $1.5 million or so on an annual basis that the board approves, and $1.5 million is by policy to be injected into the reserve funds to administer to the repair and replacement of these assets. And if you took $1.5 million or so divided about roughly 30,000 owner members, that's $50. So $50 into your 497 is about 10%. So it's below the industry averages for what you would normally pay to assist in the repair and replacement of all these beautiful amenities here. And the last percent comes from the dividends and the dividends on our reserve funds. Roughly about 1.5% yield is what we're projecting. And those funds are, stay right within the reserve funds by policy. So those three aggregate are inflows. The outflows are for the repair and replacement, roughly as you saw. I don't have it up there, but yeah, it is right there, 5.6 million, 10.7, 5.2. So you have years in which the inflows exceed the outflows, and then your reserve funds are buffered by that. And then, but it can move in and out. And just to, as I pointed out, there are components of this fully funded balance percent that I'll explain that are for unknowns, if you will, for capital that we don't know. And that's why, to some extent, that 40% floor that you're referencing is a little bit unique for Sun City West, because we have our capital, our new capital within the whole pot instead of just repair and replacement only. But I now giving you the components. The reserve study is 50 million. The reserve funds are roughly 28 million as we speak. So the industry standards are that if you have zero, if you're not putting anything away and you're some small HOA and I'll just deal with it when it breaks, then you have a 0% funding equation, and when it breaks, you go to all your members and you do a special assessment, and everybody has to pay on that. Then there's some that do 100%, and they've got everything tucked away, and they are 100% funded. They have the money in the bank to any time it breaks. But your point is valid, is that we don't ever anticipate that all 50 million would come due at any given time, but you by commitment to the association, you have to be prepared for that. And so that's what the FFB percentage is considered, a risk assessment. And the industry standards say that 30% is considered on the low end of acceptable, 70% to 100% is considered gold, and 55% where we're at right now is considered very adequate. So that's hopefully explains that.
Any other questions?
Julie Betts, 113523. Early on, there was a slide that introduced that you used the REDS program for unregistered properties. I was just wondering if you could clarify what an unregistered property is.
Yeah, there are three things that this REDS program identifies. But if you take it before the REDS program was initiated, the requirement within the facility agreement you sign actually says in black and white that if you are ever have a transaction on your property, it was incumbent upon the owner member to notify the registration or membership, and then the appropriate fees would be administered, whether that was a transfer fee because you're adding somebody on or off the deed, whether or not you've sold your property. And for those reasons, you're relying on 17,000 households and 30,000 owner members on there to be of their honesty or whatever. And it's a harsh word. Many of them just don't remember that that's something they need to do. And so the REDS program is a simple product that examines the Maricopa County registered deed changes. And when something occurs, it spits out a summary to our association that says somebody on the deed changed. And when we use that word unregistered, it meant that we weren't notified by the owner member. It came to us from the county, this program, and then we administer a statement or what was the transaction. Many times there's no effect at all. Just a name change, or you're adding a person on or off that had no impact on our association. But if it did require, if there was something that triggered our APF or triggered our transfer fee, then that's where we picked up approximately $392,000. Now those monies are always going to come due at the point when the property is sold. If we have unpaid amounts, you can file liens on that. So a lot of this is moving it forward. It's moving it forward from future and catching it more real time. We are pleased. We hear a lot of comments that I'd rather have the notification now than to be told about it when you go, sell your home, and now what is this? I didn't even know about it. And then we get into, well, you should have told us. And so this actually brings it real time, and we find that most people, even if they don't always know that was a requirement, they find it, I'd rather know it now than later.
Folks, any other questions?
Bill Weaver, 124087. This is for Todd. I'm just wondering what the impact has been of having 4 and 5 carts per group on the golf courses, and how we're recovering from that, how we're going to recover from that, and what kind of costs are involved there.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Every year we normally get traffic areas just from the normal cart wear, and that's 2 carts per group. But over the past years, with the COVID-19, the pandemic, that we did go to single rider carts. So we've had 4 carts per group over the past year, and we are seeing the effects of that. We are having more traffic areas out there. So we're trying to manage that the best we can through stakes and rope, and trying to get areas or golfers to go into some areas where we have good grass. We may have to do a little bit of sodding this summer on some of those high traffic areas, but we normally do that anyway every spring and summer with normal wear and tear from the carts. But if you think about it, 2 carts versus 4, now we have double the cart traffic out there for the past year. So, and we knew that was coming, so we tried to limit the damage as much as possible by putting up stakes and ropes. So we'll just see how it comes out, and especially on the fairways. You don't see that damage right now because it's overseeded, It's the damage that it's doing to the underlying Bermuda grass. And I think we'll see that in a couple months, but we'll address that when it comes up. Again, whether we have to do some extra fertilizing or some sodding, but we'll manage that when the time comes. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I just want to thank you all for being here. This concludes this, and like Katie mentioned earlier, this is viewable again at your leisure. All these slides will be up there, and we do have another presentation that we're scheduled for tomorrow night at 5:30. And again, on our webpage, this is there for your viewing at any time. Thank you all for attending.